freedom is not what you think it is. You imagine freedom as having more choices, more options, more control over your circumstances. But the Stoics discovered something that cuts deeper. You are already free, and you have always been enslaved, not by external chains, but by your refusal to accept what cannot be changed. What if everything you resist is the very thing keeping you imprisoned? We spend our lives fighting reality. We rage against aging, against loss, against the basic fact that other people will not behave as we wish them to. We exhaust ourselves trying to control the uncontrollable, to change the unchangeable, to make the world conform to our preferences. And in this futile struggle, we create our own suffering, our own prison, our own hell. The Stoics watched this pattern play out in every generation and arrived at a conclusion so brutal that most people cannot bear to hear it. You will never be free until you accept what you cannot change. This is not the gentle acceptance of modern self-help, the passive resignation that tells you to lower your standards and settle for less. This is something far more radical and far more demanding. It is the active embrace of reality exactly as it is, including the parts that horrify you, the parts that seem unjust, the parts you would give anything to change. It is the recognition that your suffering comes not from reality itself, but from your argument with reality, your insistence that it should be different than it is. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and could command almost anything, yet he wrote in private about the things he could not control: the disloyalty of friends, the weakness of his own body, the chaos of events beyond any human authority. Epictetus was enslaved, owned by another human being with no legal right even to his own life, yet he became one of the freest minds in history by accepting completely what was beyond his power to change. Seneca lived through exile, loss of fortune, and eventually execution, yet maintained an inner peace that his circumstances could not touch. What did they know that we have forgotten? They knew 7 truths so harsh that hearing them feels like violence, yet accepting them creates a liberation more complete than any external freedom could provide. These are not comfortable truths. They will not make you feel better in the moment you encounter them. They are designed to shatter the illusions that keep you trapped, to burn away the stories you tell yourself about how life should be, to leave you standing naked before reality with no defense except acceptance. And in that terrible honesty, something unexpected happens: you become free. The first truth is this: most of your suffering is self-inflicted, created not by circumstances but by your judgments about those circumstances. This is almost unbearable to accept because it means you cannot blame your pain on the world, on other people, on bad luck or injustice. It means you are complicit in your own misery through the stories you tell yourself about what is happening to you. The event itself is neutral. It is your interpretation that makes it unbearable. Think about the last time you suffered intensely. Now separate the actual event from your thoughts about the event. Someone rejected you. That is a fact. The story that you are unlovable, that you will always be alone, that this rejection proves your fundamental unworthiness, that is your addition to the facts. You lost money. That happened. The narrative that you are a failure, that you will never recover, that this loss defines your future, that narrative is your creation. The event occurred in a moment, but your thoughts about it create suffering that lasts for years. Epictetus taught this with brutal clarity. It is not things themselves that disturb people, but their judgments about those things. A simple sentence that destroys the entire foundation of blame, of victimhood, of the stories we use to avoid responsibility for our own mental state. If your suffering comes from your judgments, then you are the author of your pain. And if you are the author, you also have the power to write a different story, not a false story that denies reality, but a true story that sees reality without the layers of catastrophic interpretation you have added to it. This does not mean that bad things are actually good, or that you should pretend pain does not exist. It means that between the event and your suffering lies a space where you are making choices about what this event means, about what it says about you, about what it predicts for your future. And most of those choices are creating suffering far beyond what the event itself demands. The Stoic learns to see this gap, to recognize their own role in transforming neutral events into personal tragedies, and to choose different interpretations that align with reality rather than with fear. Before we continue with the remaining 6 truths, consider this. If you are tired of suffering unnecessarily, if you are ready to confront the brutal realities that create genuine freedom, subscribe to this channel. We do not offer comfort here, we offer truth. And truth, when fully accepted, provides a liberation that comfort never could. The second truth: you cannot control other people, and your attempts to do so are destroying your peace. We know this intellectually, we might even agree with it philosophically, yet we spend tremendous energy trying to make people behave differently, think differently, feel differently about us. We manipulate, we cajole, we punish, we reward, all in service of controlling what was never ours to control in the first place. Every relationship conflict, every workplace frustration, every family drama shares this same root. Someone is not behaving as you believe they should, and you are suffering because of the gap between your expectation and their reality. But their behavior belongs to them, flows from their own character and choices, operates according to their own will. You can influence, you can request, you can set boundaries around what you will accept, but you cannot control. And your insistence on control creates a prison where you are perpetually disappointed by other people's refusal to conform to your script. The Stoic solution is radical acceptance of others' autonomy. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself each morning that he would encounter difficult people, the ungrateful, the violent, the deceitful. But he framed this not as a complaint but as a simple fact of reality. These people exist, they will behave according to their nature, and his peace could not depend on them behaving differently because their behavior was not within his control. He could control only his response to them, with patience, with understanding of their ignorance, with maintenance of his own character regardless of theirs. This acceptance does not mean tolerating abuse or allowing others to violate your boundaries. It means recognizing that you cannot change who they are, you can only decide what you will accept in your life. And that decision comes from a place of clarity rather than from the fantasy that if you just try harder, explain better, love them more, they will finally become who you need them to be. They will not. They are who they are. And your freedom begins when you stop fighting this truth. The third truth cuts even deeper. You are going to die. Everyone you love is going to die. And everything you build will eventually be destroyed. This is not pessimism. This is reality. Yet we live in elaborate denial of this truth, constructing our lives as if we have unlimited time, as if loss will somehow spare us, as if permanence is possible in a universe defined by change. And this denial creates a life half-lived, where we postpone what matters while we pursue what is ultimately meaningless. The Stoics practiced memento mori, remember you will die, not as morbid obsession but as liberating clarity. When you truly accept your mortality, trivialities lose their power over you. The argument that seemed important reveals itself as a waste of precious time. The grudge you were holding seems absurd when measured against your finite days. The fear that was paralyzing you becomes less significant when you recognize that the worst outcome is simply a slightly earlier arrival at an inevitable destination. Seneca wrote that we are dying from the moment we are born, that each day subtracts from the total rather than adding to it. He watched people waste their lives on things they did not care about, in service of impressing people they did not like, postponing joy and meaning for a future that was never guaranteed. And he urged his readers to live as if each day might be their last, not recklessly, but intentionally, with full awareness of the gift and fragility of existence. This truth becomes even more brutal when applied to those you love. You cannot protect them from death. You cannot ensure they will be here tomorrow. Every goodbye contains the possibility of finality, and you do not know which goodbye will be the last one. This awareness could create paralyzing anxiety, or it could create something beautiful, the choice to love them fully now, to express what matters while there is still time, to release petty conflicts in recognition that the clock is running and there are better ways to spend your remaining moments together. The fourth truth: life is not fair, will never be fair, and your demand for fairness is a source of endless suffering. We are raised on stories of justice, of good being rewarded and evil punished, of virtue leading to success and vice to failure. But reality operates by different rules. Good people suffer terrible fates. Cruel people prosper. Hard work sometimes leads nowhere while luck elevates the undeserving. And no amount of protest will change this fundamental characteristic of existence. Marcus Aurelius had to reconcile his philosophical commitment to justice with the reality of governing a world where justice was often absent. He did not abandon his commitment to acting justly. In fact, it became even more important precisely because the universe did not guarantee just outcomes. But he stopped expecting the world to be fair, stopped using unfairness as an excuse for bitterness, stopped waiting for some cosmic authority to right all wrongs before he could be at peace. The Stoic accepts that fairness is a human concept, not a law of nature. Nature does not care about your sense of justice. The universe is not tracking who deserves what. Events unfold according to cause and effect, to random chance, to the complex intersection of countless variables, not according to moral scorecards. And when you accept this, you stop wasting energy on outrage at injustice and start focusing energy on acting justly regardless of whether justice will be rewarded. This does not mean you stop fighting injustice or working toward a better world. It means you do so without the entitled expectation that the universe owes you success, without the bitter disappointment when your efforts do not produce the outcomes you believe they should, without tying your peace to external results you cannot control. You act justly because it aligns with your character, not because you believe justice is guaranteed to triumph. The fifth truth is perhaps the most difficult for modern minds to accept. You are not special, your problems are not unique, and the universe does not revolve around your preferences. We live in a culture that tells us we are exceptional, that our feelings are supremely important, that the world should accommodate our needs and sensitivities. But the Stoics would say this is a comfortable lie that ultimately creates suffering by setting us against the indifferent reality of existence. Epictetus would remind his students that they are one small part of a vast whole, that their individual concerns, while real to them, are no more significant to the universe than the concerns of any other being. This was not meant to crush their spirit, but to liberate them from the prison of self-importance. When you stop believing you are the center of existence, you stop expecting existence to bend to your will. And in that release of centrality comes a strange relief. You are not responsible for holding everything together, for making everything work out, for having everything go your way. Your pain is real, but it is also ordinary. Others have felt what you feel, have endured what you endure, have survived what you believe is unsurvivable. This truth could be diminishing, or it could be connecting. You are part of the human experience, sharing in struggles that are universal rather than personally targeted by fate. The traffic that angers you also angers others. The loss that devastates you has devastated countless people before you and will devastate countless more after you. You are not being singled out for suffering. You are participating in the common condition of being human. and the universe genuinely does not care about your preferences. It will rain on your important day. People will die before you are ready to lose them. Your carefully constructed plans will be destroyed by events beyond your control. You can rage against this indifference, or you can accept it and find peace in recognizing that your liberation does not depend on the universe caring about you. It depends on you learning to navigate reality as it is rather than as you wish it would be. The sixth truth: your emotions are not facts, your feelings are not wisdom, and what you want in the moment is often opposed to what you actually need. We have been taught to trust our feelings, to follow our heart, to honor our emotional truth. But the Stoics understood that emotions are reactions, often based on false beliefs, frequently leading us away from what we claim to value. The person who feels insulted may be reacting to their own insecurity rather than to actual offense. The person who feels hopeless may be responding to a temporary setback rather than to their actual circumstances. Feelings are information, but they are unreliable narrators of reality. Marcus Aurelius constantly examined his emotional reactions, asking whether they were based on truth or on his own projections and fears. When he felt angry, he would question whether the anger was justified or whether it was his ego reacting to a perceived slight. When he felt anxious, he would separate the feeling from the facts, often discovering that the anxiety was creating imaginary futures that had no basis in present reality. This practice did not eliminate his emotions, it prevented them from controlling him. The modern world has made emotions sacred, beyond questioning or challenging. But this elevates feeling above thinking, instinct above reason, reaction above reflection. And it creates a life where you are tossed about by every emotional wave, where your peace depends on maintaining positive feelings, where any negative emotion is treated as an emergency requiring immediate resolution. The Stoic learns to feel emotions fully while not being controlled by them, to acknowledge feelings without treating them as commands that must be obeyed. What you want right now is often the enemy of what you say you want overall. You want to stay in bed, but you also want to be healthy and productive. You want to avoid difficult conversations, but you also want meaningful relationships. You want immediate pleasure, but you also want long-term well-being. These conflicts are constant, and your feelings in the moment will almost always advocate for the short-term satisfaction over the long-term value. The Stoic develops the capacity to act according to reason rather than feeling, to choose what aligns with their values even when it contradicts what they want in the moment. This is not suppression of emotion or denial of feeling. It is the mature recognition that you are not your emotions, that feelings are temporary states that arise and pass, and that you have the capacity to experience an emotion without being commanded by it. You can feel fear and act courageously anyway. You can feel anger and respond with patience anyway. You can feel desire and choose discipline anyway. This gap between feeling and action is where freedom lives, the space in which you choose your response rather than being controlled by automatic reaction. The seventh and final truth is the most liberating and the most terrible. Nothing external can harm your character unless you allow it, which means you are responsible for who you become regardless of your circumstances. This is brutal because it removes every excuse, every justification for moral failure based on difficulty. You cannot blame your character on your upbringing, your circumstances, your suffering. These things influence you, shape the challenges you face, make the path harder or easier, but they do not determine who you become. That determination lies with you alone. Epictetus lived this truth from the most extreme position possible. He was enslaved, physically powerless, subjected to conditions that would break most people. Yet he became one of history's great philosophers, a man of profound character and wisdom, because he recognized that while his circumstances were beyond his control, his response to those circumstances was entirely within his control. He could not choose freedom of body, but he could choose freedom of mind. He could not control what was done to him, but he could control who he was in the midst of what was done to him. This truth destroys the victim narrative that our culture often embraces. It does not deny that bad things happen to people who do not deserve them, that injustice is real, that circumstances can be devastating. But it insists that even in the midst of terrible circumstances, you retain the capacity to choose your character. You can be wronged without becoming bitter. You can suffer without becoming cruel. You can lose everything external while maintaining your integrity. And in fact, your character is most truly revealed not in ease but in adversity, not when things go well but when everything falls apart. The responsibility this truth demands is crushing and clarifying at once. You cannot hide behind circumstances anymore. You cannot excuse your failures of character by pointing to your difficulties. You cannot defer becoming who you wish to be until conditions improve. You must work on your character now, in the circumstances you face now, with the challenges you have now. And this work is not optional if you wish to be free. It is the very essence of freedom itself. Seneca wrote that difficulties are not obstacles to virtue but opportunities for it, that easy circumstances create soft character while challenging circumstances forge strong character. He observed that people who had everything often had no character at all, while people who had nothing sometimes developed qualities that made them giants among humans. The difference was not in what happened to them but in how they chose to respond, what they made of their circumstances, who they decided to be regardless of what life gave them. These 7 truths work together to create a framework for genuine freedom. When you accept that your suffering is self-created through your judgments, you stop blaming external events and start examining your interpretations. When you release the need to control others, you reclaim the energy wasted on impossible tasks and redirect it towards self-mastery. When you embrace your mortality, you start living with urgency and intention rather than drifting through unlimited tomorrows that do not exist. When you abandon the demand for fairness, you stop waiting for the universe to give you permission to be at peace and claim that peace regardless of circumstances. When you recognize you are not the center of the universe, you stop taking everything personally and start seeing your experiences as part of the larger human condition. When you stop treating feelings as facts, you create space between stimulus and response where choice becomes possible. And when you accept complete responsibility for your character, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the author of who you are. Together, these truths are not a philosophy of comfort. They are a practice of liberation through unflinching acceptance of reality. But acceptance does not mean passivity. This is where most people misunderstand Stoic philosophy. They hear, accept what you cannot change, and interpret it as, do nothing, care about nothing, resign yourself to whatever happens. But the Stoics were deeply engaged with life, working tirelessly to improve their communities, fighting against injustice, building, creating, loving fully. The difference was that they acted from acceptance rather than from resistance, from clarity about what they could control rather than from delusion about what they could not. Marcus Aurelius accepted that plague would kill thousands in his empire, that he could not save everyone, that suffering was part of existence. This acceptance did not make him apathetic. It freed him to focus his energy on what he could do rather than paralyzing himself with grief over what he could not do. He organized relief efforts, maintained order, led with compassion. But he did not torture himself with the fantasy that he should be able to stop death itself, that a good ruler should be able to protect everyone from harm, that the plague was somehow his personal failure. This is the Stoic way. Accept fully what is beyond your control, then act decisively within the sphere of what you can influence. Do not waste energy denying reality. arguing with unchangeable facts, demanding that the universe operate differently. But also do not use acceptance as an excuse for inaction within your sphere of power. You cannot control whether you get sick, but you can control how you care for your health. You cannot control others' choices, but you can control what you tolerate in your life. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control the quality of your effort. The practical application of these 7 truths transforms daily life. You receive criticism, and instead of reacting defensively, you pause and examine whether the criticism is true. If it is, you accept it and improve. If it is not, you release it without the need to convince your critic otherwise. Either way, you are not controlled by the criticism because you have accepted that others will judge you and that their judgment does not determine your worth. You face disappointment, and instead of spiraling into catastrophic thinking about what this means for your future, you separate the fact of the disappointment from your interpretation of it. Something did not work out, that is all. The story about what this proves about you is your addition, and you can choose not to add it. You encounter someone behaving badly, and instead of exhausting yourself trying to change them or taking their behavior as a personal attack, you recognize they are operating from their own character and confusion. You can set boundaries, you can remove yourself from their presence, but you do not need them to become different before you can be at peace. Your peace exists independently of their behavior because you have accepted that you cannot control them. You face your mortality through illness, loss, or simply the passage of time, and instead of denying it or falling into despair, you let it clarify what matters. The petty concerns that were consuming your energy reveal themselves as distractions. The important relationships demand your attention and care. The meaningful work calls for your commitment. Death stops being the enemy and becomes the teacher, showing you how to live before it is too late. You witness injustice, in your life or in the world, and instead of using it as an excuse for bitterness or as proof that effort is meaningless, you accept that life is not fair and act justly anyway. You fight against injustice not because you believe you are guaranteed to win, but because fighting for justice is who you choose to be. The outcome belongs to fate, your effort belongs to you, and you keep your peace by focusing on what belongs to you. You feel intense emotion, anger, fear, desire, grief, and instead of being swept away by it or treating it as unquestionable truth, you observe it with curiosity. I am feeling anger. What belief is creating this anger? Is that belief true? Does acting on this anger serve my values? The emotion does not disappear, but it no longer controls you. You have created space between the feeling and your response, and in that space you exercise your freedom to choose. You face difficulty, limitation, suffering, and instead of asking, "Why me?" or waiting for circumstances to improve before you work on yourself, you ask, "Who will I be in the midst of this?" You recognize that your character is being forged in this exact moment, in these exact circumstances, and that there is no future perfect time when self-development will be easier. The work is now, with what you have, where you are. And this acceptance of responsibility is simultaneously the heaviest burden and the greatest liberation. The transformation that comes from living these 7 truths is not dramatic or sudden. It is a gradual rewiring of how you relate to reality, a slow accumulation of moments where you chose acceptance over resistance, responsibility over blame, clarity over comfortable illusion. Over time, you notice that things that used to devastate you now barely register. Not because you have become hard or uncaring, but because you have stopped creating unnecessary suffering through your interpretations and demands. You notice that you have more energy, more peace, more capacity for genuine joy. Not because your circumstances have improved, but because you are no longer fighting reality. You have aligned yourself with how things actually are rather than how you wish they would be, and this alignment creates a flow that resistance always disrupted. You are swimming with the current of existence rather than exhausting yourself trying to swim against it. You notice that your relationships improve, not because others have changed, but because you have stopped trying to control them. You love them as they are rather than as you need them to be. You set boundaries without resentment because you have accepted that boundaries are your responsibility, not their failure. You connect more deeply because you are present rather than constantly managing your disappointment that they are not different. You notice that your work becomes more effective, not because you have gained more control, but because you are focusing your energy on what is actually within your power. You stop agonizing over outcomes you cannot control and invest that energy in the quality of your process. You accept that results depend on countless factors outside your influence, so you detach your peace from results and attach it instead to the integrity of your effort. But perhaps the most profound change is internal, a shift in your relationship with yourself. When you accept these 7 truths, you stop being at war with reality, and this cessation of internal conflict creates a silence, a stillness, a peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. You discover that you can be okay even when things are not okay, that you can maintain your center even when everything around you is chaos, that you can be whole even when life is broken. This is the freedom the Stoics promised, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within difficulty. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of peace alongside pain. Not a life without suffering, but a life where suffering does not destroy you because you have learned to suffer consciously, to choose your response even when you cannot choose your circumstances, to maintain your character regardless of what is taken from you. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this freedom while ruling an empire in crisis. Plague, war, betrayal, loss. He faced all of it while maintaining the philosophical practice that kept him sane. He did not pretend these things were not happening or that they did not hurt. He acknowledged the difficulty fully while refusing to let difficulty dictate his character. He suffered consciously, choosing who he would be in the midst of suffering, and in that choice he was free even when everything external was falling apart. Epictetus demonstrated this freedom from the position of having nothing, no political power, no wealth, no control even over his own body. Yet he was free because he had the only freedom that truly matters, the freedom to choose his response to what happened to him. He could not stop being enslaved, but he could choose not to have the soul of a slave. He could not prevent pain, but he could choose not to add suffering through resistance to pain. He was proof that freedom is not about circumstances, it is about consciousness. Seneca demonstrated this freedom through acceptance of his own death. When Nero ordered his execution, Seneca faced it with the calm of someone who had been preparing for this moment through years of philosophical practice. He had accepted his mortality long ago, had lived in awareness that death could come at any time, had maintained his character knowing that external power could take everything except his integrity. And so when death arrived, he met it not with terror but with the philosophical composure of someone who understood that this was always part of the deal. These are not abstract historical examples, they are templates for how to live. You may not face empire-level challenges or literal slavery or forced suicide, but you face the modern equivalents. You face circumstances beyond your control, suffering you did not choose, disappointments that feel unbearable, losses that seem to make life meaningless. And in those moments, you have the same choice the Stoics had. Will you be destroyed by circumstances, or will you maintain your center regardless of circumstances? Will you blame reality for not conforming to your preferences, or will you accept reality and find peace anyway? The practice is daily, moment by moment, decision by decision. Each time you choose acceptance over resistance, you strengthen that capacity. Each time you take responsibility for your character instead of blaming circumstances, you grow that muscle. Each time you separate events from your interpretation of events, you create more space for freedom. The transformation is not dramatic, it is accumulative. You are becoming someone who can stand firm in the midst of chaos, not through rigidity but through acceptance, not through control but through release of the need to control. Let these 7 brutal truths work on you. Do not try to accept them all at once. Take them one at a time, test them against your experience, see where resistance arises and examine what that resistance is protecting. Notice where you are creating your own suffering through interpretation. Notice where you are wasting energy trying to control what you cannot control. Notice where you are living in denial of mortality. Notice where you are demanding fairness from a universe that does not operate on fairness. Notice where you are making yourself the center of existence. Notice where you are treating feelings as facts. Notice where you are avoiding responsibility for your character. And as you notice these patterns, begin the work of change. Not through force or self-criticism, but through patient, persistent practice. You will fail, you will fall back into old patterns, you will resist truths you have already accepted. This is normal, expected, part of the process. The Stoics themselves struggled with these truths throughout their lives. They were practices to return to, not destinations reached once and permanently inhabited. But over time, something shifts. The truths that seemed brutal begin to feel liberating. The acceptance that felt like surrender begins to feel like strength. The responsibility that felt like burden begins to feel like power. And you discover that the freedom you were seeking through control, through perfect circumstances, through life finally being fair, that freedom was always available to you through acceptance, through responsibility, through alignment with reality as it actually is. The Stoics called this living according to nature. Not nature as in trees and rivers, but nature as in the fundamental truth of existence. Things change, people die, life is not fair, you cannot control others, your feelings are not facts, and you are responsible for who you become. These are not pessimistic observations, they are accurate descriptions of reality. And when you stop fighting reality, when you align yourself with these truths instead of against them, you discover a peace that circumstances cannot touch, a freedom that external events cannot revoke, a wholeness that loss cannot fragment. This is what the Stoics offer you, not comfort, not easy answers, not the promise that life will be painless. They offer something far more valuable, the possibility of being at peace regardless of whether life is comfortable, of being free regardless of your circumstances, of being whole regardless of what is taken from you. They offer the possibility of living consciously, choosing your character, maintaining your center while everything around you changes. They offer the possibility of becoming dangerous, not to others, but to the forces that try to control you through your own resistance to reality. As we close, remember this: you are not free because life is easy. You are free because you have accepted what cannot be changed and take responsibility for what can be changed. You are free because you have stopped demanding that the universe operate according to your preferences and started operating according to the universe's actual laws. You are free because you have released the need to control, to be special, to live forever, to have everything be fair, to let feelings dictate action. You are free because you have chosen to be responsible for your character regardless of circumstances. If you are ready to embrace these brutal truths and claim the freedom they offer, subscribe to this channel and continue this journey. The path is not easy. It requires confronting uncomfortable realities, releasing comfortable illusions, taking responsibility you might prefer to avoid. But it leads to a life that is truly yours, lived from your own center, unshaken by external chaos, at peace regardless of circumstances. The world will rage, life will be unfair, People will disappoint you, loss will come. And you, accepting, responsible, conscious, will stand firm. Not because nothing can touch you, but because you have learned to be whole even when everything is broken. This is Stoic freedom. This is the life that waits for you on the other side of acceptance. The only question is, are you ready to stop fighting reality and start living according to truth?